Rolling Out. This is Christal Jordan, and you guys know, if you see me, you know I am back with another cover conversation. Here at Rolling Out, I get the opportunity to talk about relationships and women's issues, and my guest today is the perfect fit for both of those things. She is none other than Reesa Teesa. Reesa Teesa, the TikTok star that was basically catapulted to superstardom when she decided to go online and share her story of heartbreak, betrayal. Well, it started actually out a little bit different than that, falling in love with a very charming man that swept her off her feet. And ultimately, she experienced what so many other people have experienced when they fall in love. The person wasn't necessarily who they said they were. Reesa's TikTok series titled Who TF Did I Marry actually resonated with over 400 million people. Now, this is the definition of going viral if I've ever heard one. Please help me welcome today's guest to Rolling Out, Reesa Teesa. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I have been trying to get to you to have this conversation because your story, I mean, it was on TikTok. I kept getting calls from people asking me, had they seen it? Had I seen it? Had I watched? I watched some and then I got tired and I watched a little bit more. And then we saw you on, mainstream news. I mean, not only did it resonate with your core audience, but it also, it just went worldwide. People really connected with your story. You had the foresight to tell this story. I mean, it's like you remembered every detail. I gotta ask you, for someone that works in law enforcement and had just gotten on TikTok a year before, what inspired you to share this story the way that you did, kind of starting from the beginning and taking people through this series in that manner? How did you come up with the idea to do that?
So basically, the way that this whole thing started, people who know the story in real life, basically, have been telling me since I got divorced, you need to write a book. You need, this is a Lifetime movie. In terms of finally putting it on TikTok, it really was just by happenstance.
Okay.
I simply saw a video where a guy said, what's the worst thing your ex has ever done? And I stitched it. And I made my own video where I talked about how he lied about his grandmother dying from COVID. That took off. And then subsequently, really within about 24 hours, I literally said to myself, you know what? I'm going to just go ahead and tell it all. Because I felt like this is one of those situations, experiences where you cannot start in the middle. You're going to have to go to the beginning. And so I've been saying that, for a while now, if you're going to tell the story, tell the whole story. Tell the good, the bad, the embarrassing. And so I just went ahead and was like, you know what? I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I think, and I hope it'll help somebody out there. And so that's what happened. I literally just decided I'm gonna tell it. And then the next question was, okay, how are you going to tell it?
Right.
And so that was where I had to put a little thought into how to tell a year and a half worth of a story as much as I can and present it in a very methodical, responsible, but organized way as well.
Very organized.
Yeah.
We're very, very organized. At any point, did you think, I may not want to tell everybody all of this? Like, did you debate on how much? Because in this story, there's a lot of things that definitely shares just a pathological liar. But there's also a lot about yourself being vulnerable and really putting yourself out there. So was there a time that you thought maybe this may be a little too much, or I don't want to be embarrassed if I tell too much?
I knew from the get-go, once I started recording, that I was going to be embarrassed.
Okay.
Because I've been carrying embarrassment and guilt and shame for 3-4 years now.
Okay.
So I knew that was definitely going to come across. The issue that I really faced was there's so much. How do I put as much as I can out there?
Yeah.
My goal was to put everything out, but was to put everything out in a responsible way.
Right.
And what that meant for me was I really was not trying to come across as a bitter woman or even be disrespectful. I really was just trying to tell, this is the experience I went through. I'm not talking about what anyone else went through. This is what I went through with this individual. But once he got exposed and his identity was plastered everywhere, I did kind of have to make a decision to go ahead and bring this series to a close.
Okay.
Because I kind of felt like, okay, you can't drag this on much longer, because you don't want this to turn into a circus.
Right.
Because it was not a circus. It was a real life experience. And like I said in the first video, everything I said in there happened. It can be verified. But yeah, there are actually things that were not covered in the 50-part series. It easily could have been 100 parts.
Wow.
Easily. And I've been saying this for a while. Not everything was in there. But again, once he was exposed, I felt like, okay, it's time
To bring this.
we're going to have to bring this to a close.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, it's funny because sitting behind you is a quote from Rihanna that says, "Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Take the moment and make it perfect." And, you know, it just, that seems to resonate so much with your story because, like you said, you'd been carrying shame, embarrassment, heartbreak, betrayal, all those things around. Did you start to feel better? I know that sometimes sharing things through writing or through, you know, even I guess sharing verbally can be cathartic and can be therapeutic. So once you got over the hump of, okay, I'm going to share this, did you start to feel better from kind of letting some of that out?
I started to feel better really in the middle of the series.
Okay.
And I kind of talked about how people were asking me, why are you putting your business all out there? And my response to them was a truthful one, which is, I feel like in order for me to move on, I kind of have to let this go. The weight of it, the weight of, I've been beating myself up year after year, month after month of, why did you let this happen? Why did you not know better? And so I did really feel like as I was recording, this is helpful to me to just go ahead and own it. Because I think that a lot of the weight was that I wasn't saying things out loud that I knew internally I needed to own. And that's my part in it. And so that's why, again, I went the route that I did. But it was very important to me, again, that I tell it with my voice.
Right.
Because I didn't want anyone else to tell my experience. I'm a big proponent of, you should tell your story the way that you're comfortable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Taresa Johnson before she became Reesa Teesa and became this viral sensation. We were talking a little bit before we got started just about how a lot of times you can want something, right? And so to the point where something may show up that's similar to what you wanted, but you want it to be that so bad.
Yeah.
Where were you at in your life, especially when it comes to relationships, when you met Legion, as we'll continue to call him? When you met Legion, where were you at in your life as a woman?
So literally before everything imploded with COVID, I was working 2 jobs. I was working full-time in law enforcement, and I was working part-time at Amazon.
Okay.
So I was working the Amazon shift 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Then I would go to my law enforcement job. I would sleep in my office until 7:50.
Okay.
And then my coworkers would wake me up so I could real quick get dressed, put on some makeup, and open my door at the latest 8:30, my office door. So my life was very just, all I did was work.
Right.
And I used it as a distraction. I was at that point in life where, you know what, I'm living on my own. I'm paying my own bills. And I talk about how, you know, I couldn't afford Michael Kors or Coach, but I was doing okay. My bills were paid. And yes,
By any means necessary, it sounds like.
right. I was doing what I had to do, like so many women.
People, right.
It just was at a point where, for me, I wanted to come home to somebody.
Yeah.
I wanted to come home and have somebody there excited to see me and for me to be excited to see them. I was nearing the age of 35, so I was facing 35. I was facing those dreadful questions of, so are you thinking of having a baby in the next year, from my doctor? And so that's why I say in this series, look, age had a lot to do with this. Religion had a lot to do with this, because I did feel like, God, what's going on? Like, I think I'm a good catch. I have a
Where's
college
mine?
degree.
Yeah.
When is it my turn? Like,
Yeah.
I'm living on my own. I'm paying my own bills. I think I'm very responsible. I'm funny. I think I really felt like I'm a good catch. What's going on? Like, I felt like God had me on hold, and He'll answer my call, and when the next available representative comes. So I just really felt like, okay, I want a relationship.
Yeah.
I want to get married. I want to have a baby.
Yeah.
That was my singular focus. And I talk about, and I will always own the fact that was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was focused on.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. And I was tired of coming home to an empty house.
Yeah. Were you dating? What efforts? Because we can, a lot of times as women, we say, well, I want this, right? But a lot of times we're sitting at home and we're working. I mean, I can't imagine after that work schedule that there was a lot of time for you to go out or try to meet people or try to be social. So what efforts were you putting in? How were you meeting people at that point in your life?
So literally, I was working Monday through Friday, Amazon, and then the law enforcement job. So literally, I decided I want to start dating. I want to date for marriage.
Okay.
And that's when I decided to create the two online dating profiles.
Okay.
One was the Facebook and one was Hinge. So my effort was, okay, I can at least date on the weekends.
Okay.
I can't really do anything Monday through Friday.
Right.
But that's what made me say, let me try the online dating. Let me see what's out there. Let me see who I meet. And so literally, I started the profile, I started the account, and I want to say within 2 or 3 days, I had matched with my ex-husband.
Okay. Now, what were you looking for? What, outside of just a future husband, that would be someone you would have children with, what characteristics? When you make those profiles, you put down, a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about what you're looking for. So at that point, what had Taresa decided would be a good fit for her when it came to a significant other?
So I wanted someone who had ambition.
Okay.
I wanted someone, I know I put on there, I wanted someone who had integrity, who was honest.
Okay.
And I really wanted to meet someone who was going to become my best friend.
Yeah.
So these are things that I know I put on there because that was what my mind was on. I really wanted to meet a guy and we develop a friendship that we both were moving into a relationship for the purpose of marriage.
Okay.
So I was very adamant and very clear that I wanted to meet someone who was also dating intentionally.
Okay.
Which is why I hit on the fact that on our first date, when he says to me, without me having to say anything, that he wants to get married, he's looking for a wife, he wants to have kids, it really was music to my ears because I was under the assumption that, if I mention it first and then he's reactive to it, that might be an issue. That might scare him off.
Yeah.
But here he is saying, no, this is why I'm here. So if you don't want those things, then maybe you're not the woman for me.
Right.
Presenting it as if, this is exactly what I want.
And I guess in hindsight, that should probably scare us off. When a man does that, when he flips the script on us and says that. But let's talk. Let's talk about what that time was like before you guys actually went on the first date. How long did you guys talk back and forth? What were those conversations like?
So we literally talked for 2 days.
Okay.
Before he asked me out on an actual date. So yes, moving fast.
Yeah.
I did not take it as a red flag. Perhaps I should have. I took it more of, okay, he's not trying to waste my time.
So it was fast, 2 days, but most women would be flattered that he was serious about getting to know me. It feels good to be wanted and desired, and for him to be excited, that feels good, right?
Right. He genuinely pursued me.
Right.
So I did not have to work for his attention. I did not have to work for his time. And these are things that I feel like we as women, you want that. You don't want to have to be the one who always initiates a conversation. You don't want to be the one who has to initiate. So when am I going to see you? No. We had great conversations. Our first conversation on the phone was like 3 hours. We talked about family. We talked about work. We talked about religion.
Yeah.
And it flowed. And that's one of the things that I try to get people to understand. It wasn't a weird conversation. It flowed as if we were two people who like, God, I'm so glad we met each other. Like, wow.
Where have you been all my life?
Where have you been?
Yeah.
And so when he said, hey, why don't we just get together this weekend? You know, Saturday, where do you want to go? And I was like, the Cheesecake Factory. And he was like, okay, well, I'm in Duluth and you're in Riverdale. So can we meet up, you know, the one perimeter? And I was like, absolutely. So obviously we all know what happened on the way to the date, but I was excited.
Yeah.
Because again, it was like, wow, I don't have to fight for his attention.
Wow. Well, I think, you know, when you look back over everything, it's yes, we want to be able to pick up on red flags, but I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to feel that way. So let's go a little bit deeper. When you guys actually started the relationship, because what was, I think, amazing about your story that might have stood out a bit more than the usual lies that a lot of people are here, is the attention to detail that he would go to, the lengths that he would go to lie, which makes me think that there had to be some type of mental issue for you to be so methodical and detailed in the lies. Do you think that specifically, like, most people would be afraid to mention that their grandmother died, like that just would be sacred, or even to make, you know, I'm talking to my brother every day that doesn't. A lot of people wouldn't go that far. Do you think that looking back on it, he studied issues and situations, even when you were talking about the mortgage, like he knew all the correct information to use? How do you feel as far as like looking back? Like at some points, I don't think you could have known, because he really did a good job of laying out a story that felt believable.
Right. So looking back on it now, because it was a very different mind frame when I was in it.
Right.
I understand now that my ex has been rehearsing these lies in his relationships. So and I also will say this, he's gotten worse. What I mean by that is who he was with his first wife was a little different than who he was with his second wife. The lies were kind of the same, but they got a little more extravagant.
He tightened up on the lies.
He tightened up on the lies. When I spoke to this second wife is really what validated for me that, oh no, he's been doing this. He has been trying to buy a house, buy cars, do all these things for years. So when I'm presenting the story in real time to people, it wasn't until, you know, part 30s, you know, or 40s where I'm like, okay, now let me explain to you what I found out from conversations with families and the ex and so-called friends, which is he's been like this for years.
Right.
The lies just get a little more extravagant and more sophisticated. So by the time I came along in his life, he already had paperwork that he had printed from 2 relationships ago, just changing the date.
That is crazy.
But again, he has a pattern of, this is the lie, I'm building on this lie, and I have evidence to show that the lie is real. So I understand the notion that a lot of women who have been in the comments have said, this could never happen to me. And I pray it doesn't. But when you're dealing with someone who's a pathological liar, there is nothing that they will not lie about. We as women, sometimes we will fall victim to, I swear on my mama, I didn't do that. Because we really feel like
he wouldn't
play about his mom.
Far, right? That's not the grandmother. COVID,
he wouldn't play about his grandmother.
Yeah.
This man will play about everybody. So he will say, anything. He will cry.
There's no boundaries.
I would never do that to you. I swear on my mama, I would never do. I swear on my grandmother's grave. And then you find out what you find out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people think they wouldn't, but it's always different when you're watching than when you're in the situation. So this has gone. I don't even think viral is the right word because 400 million people Good Morning America, Tamara. I mean, the response that you've gotten has got to be unbelievable to you. How did you feel as you started seeing the numbers come in and you started getting the comments? Like, take us through that time period. You're like, whoa, like what did that feel like?
In some ways, and I'll just being in the spirit of being transparent, I still don't fully grasp how big it is.
Okay.
I still get a little surprised when I meet people and they're like, girl, my mama watched it. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Because I realize that my actual immediate world is pretty small.
Yeah.
I'm a woman who gets up, I go to work, I come home, I do some grocery shopping on the weekend, I stick with family, close friends. I stick with the same circle I've had for years. So I kind of didn't know just how big it is.
Yeah.
The moment that I knew, oh, this is perhaps bigger than I thought, was a coworker text me and said, you're all over my Facebook. And I was like, but I'm not on Facebook.
That's
she
all
said,
over the world news.
She said, you were all over my Facebook. So
Yeah.
and I remember she sent me a screenshot.
Yeah.
That was kind of my first clue of, oh, okay. And then, people would tag me in videos from London or South Africa. So yes, then I kind of had to admit,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, this is much more than the 20,000 views that I initially started with. So that's when I figured out.
So you are, and aptly so, have been, deemed this genius at storytelling. I mean, this, because there's a lot of people that are on social media, but to be able to tell something with the precision and to make it a series. I mean, people were tuning into your TikTok like they tune into reality shows, right? Or they binge watch something on Netflix. What do you think it was about your story that resonated and was so different than the other? There's people crying people set cameras up and just crying to share. People are sharing, but I've never seen something take off to this extent and to have such crossover appeal. Like you said, outside of your circle, South Africa, London, Good Morning America, Germany, people are connecting with this. What is the difference in your story?
So I think it's actually twofold. This is really what I believe. I think it's two things. One, it truly is so outrageous and people find it entertaining. They cannot believe the phone calls where no one was on the phone. They cannot believe taking me to a cemetery here in Atlanta pretending to show me your grandparents' grave. It's so crazy that they're like, oh girl, you've got to see this. This is the most entertaining thing I've seen all year. So you have that sector of people, but then you also have the other people who've been through something like it. And they too have felt shame, guilt, embarrassment. They know they're not dumb, but they feel like if I were to tell my story, everybody and their mama would call me a idiot.
Right.
And so I think for them, they see a woman who no makeup, hair sometimes on her head, sometimes it's not, saying, look, I'm going to tell this story. It is not going to make me look good.
Right.
But I'm still going to tell this story, and I'm going to tell it organized so that way I don't sound like I'm all over the place. Because I do think one good piece of storytelling is making sure your audience is clear on what's going on. That's why I had certain videos where I said, okay,